Hello, welcome. In this video, I'm going to go over Lattice and how you can use Lattice to deform its shape. For example, this is a sphere that I've already created a lattice and since deleted it. But you can use it to better manipulate your shapes, but also how you could potentially use a lattice. Like over here, if I were to go ahead and press play on my timeline, how you could potentially animate shapes over time as well. Admittedly, a lattice might not be the best way to animate a shape, but if you don't know how to use bones and connect them, a lattice might be just good enough to be able to do what you're trying to do. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to hide these objects here. I'm going to use select them, Control H to hide them. And so first what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and create a default polygon sphere. So I'm going to go in here, create polygon primitive sphere option box, edit, reset my settings and tell it to create. So I'm just going to raise it so it's above the grid plane. And so what I have right here is my sphere. Instead of trying to use my sphere and trying to go into either, let's see, vertices and select some of these vertices and try to manipulate them. Yes, this is a method to manipulate them. I could either do this. You could also use the soft selection tool to adjust them. But instead of doing that, instead of doing this, let's go back to the object. I'm going to use a lattice. In the modeling menu set, we're going to go with our object selected. We're going to go to deform and we're going to go to lattice option box, edit reset settings. And so all I'm going to do for this one, for my settings, I'm going to, let's say, turn off the use local mode. For the division, this is going to create a structure around your object. So right now the divisions are 2, 5, 2. If you don't know what these are, think about X, Y, Z. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it to create. And so far we have this. However, right now, since it was initially created, I could always go into the lattice um, in the outliner. If I click on my lattice that was created, if I go down the channel box, I can see my divisions for STU. So it's 2, 5, 2. Now, if I go and tell it 3, you can see how along X, which is labeled S, it has 3 sections, 1, 2, 3. Let's see, 5 for height and 2 for Z. So if I'm fine with that, I could leave that there. Or you could always here, I'm going to go ahead and tell it 4 as an example. You can see how there's 4 points, 1, 2, 3, 4 divisions. And so I'm going to leave this one back to 3. So I have something that looks like this, 3, 5, 3. And what I'm able to do with my lattice selected, if I click and hold down the right mouse button over the lattice and select the lattice point, I have these little grids. Oh, first and foremost, let me go back to lattice and I'm going to hold down and select the base. If you want to scale this, you need to scale it immediately as you created it. So if I press and hold down R, or just press R, I'm able to scale the actual lattice shape. So this is going to be what the lattice is what I'm going to be able to manipulate to change the actual shape of my object. So depending if it's really small, I want to make sure that it's big enough to encompass everything. And so I have this. Okay, now that we're done, I'm now going to just click on the background to deselect. I'm going to click on my lattice shape. I'm going to click and hold down the right mouse button to go to lattice points. And so now I have these points. And so, for example, I'm using my perspective view. I'm going to try to select the topmost lattice points. And using my move tool, what I'm able to do is I can move them up and down. You can see it's now like a deformer, what's happening. So say, for example, I wanted to get an egg shape. So I could select whole rows of lattices. You can see how they can move up and down. I'm right now just using the move tool. So what you're also able to do is like, say for example, I wanted like an egg shape. And what if I wanted these to be larger? I can use my scale tool and I'm just going to scale the X and Z by clicking on this box right here. You can make it wider or thinner depending on what you're trying to create. Now, again, consider these weights that are placed around your shape. So they're either pushing or tugging and pulling. to create the shape that you have. But here, I don't necessarily want to move those. Now, you could also use the rotate tool and press E on my keyboard to rotate these points as well. You might not necessarily see much change with this round shape, but these also have, you could rotate them as well. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and just, for example, here, let me go switch back to my move tool. I can move these as well. So I get a shape that looks like this. But you can see with these lattice points, they allow you to manipulate your shape. Now you are able to also select individual points. So say, for example, if I select this point up here, use my move tool, this one also has some weight. It has some influence around the area that it's connected to. And so you could either move, you can push and pull. If you want to do symmetrical stuff, I would suggest that make smart, effective use of the scale tool, where say I want these to be wider, so I'm pulling them all out, as opposed to moving them using the move tool. So these are different things that you're able to do. So here I'm going to select all of these in the corner. Yeah, I want to actually move this one right here. So you see the resulting shape. It's making use of this lattice to create this shape. So this is just to manipulate a shape that maybe you don't want to be animated over time. And one thing that I should mention, which is very important, is that depending on how much information your object has to create its shape, will determine on how smooth the object is. So, for example, right now I could still go to my sphere. If I was to remove some of the subdivisions for the height and width, this will be less smooth. If I change this, for example, to 5 for both of them, it's not as smooth because there's less information. So I'm going to change this back to 20 for both of them. So keep that in mind. A very important thing to make note of as well is that if you try to move this shape without moving the lattices, what's going to happen is that it's going to go back to its default shape, which is a sphere. This lattice, as it goes through it, it changes shape. So you might not necessarily want that. I'm going to undo. So one thing that you could always do is that if this shape is done, you could always delete the construction history, basically saying that, hey, I want this shape. You could go to edit, delete by type, and select history, and the lattice and the base are gone, and now you're left with the resulting shape. But if I undo, or what you could always do if you want to further adjust it, you could parent the lattices to the sphere. So I'm going to select the children, hold down Shift and select the sphere. So that's the last one selected. I'm going to press P, or you can go to Edit, Parent, and now whenever you move the sphere, the lattice follows. And you can still go into the sphere. You can still change the lattice. In this case, I'm going to hide them. I'm going to select them, Control H to hide them. So they're still connected. I just can't see them. So that's one option. So this is if you only want to use a lattice to manipulate a shape so that you are able to push and pull the lattice points to manipulate your object. What I also showed is how you could potentially use a lattice to animate a shape. Now, this is only good if you don't know how to use, um, if you haven't gone to creating bones and or joints and bones, and then done some rigging where you connect that skeleton to the object. So, say for example, I'm going to go into create polygon primitives. I'm going to go and create a cube option box. Edit, reset the settings, create. Now, what I need to do for my cube, I needed to have more information. So within the channel box with my cube selected, I'm going to scroll down to the inputs. And so this time for the subdivisions width, I want this to be 2. For the height, I'm going to give this 10. And for the depth, I'm going to give this 2 as well. And so if I look at my cube now, it has a lot more information. I'm going to use my scale tool. I'm going to press R on my keyboard. I'm going to scale this along the Y. So it's along. I'm going to move it up now. So I have this shape. Now what I want to do for this shape, I want to go ahead and create a lattice. So I'm going to go back to my Molly menu set under Deform, Lattice option box. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just create this one, this lattice, which is 2, 5, and 2. Create. Now you can't see the lattice because the lattice is exactly the shape of my elongated cube. So I'm going to select the lattice, hold down Shift and select the base. I'm going to use my scale tool. I'm going to press R on my keyboard. What I want to do, I want to extend the X and Z. So I'm going to click on this box right here, the square, and you can now see the lattice. And what I'm going to do, I want to just raise it up. I want to drag it along Y just a bit so that it's clearly larger. In this case, what I want to do, I want to, it's like further manipulate it. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add some more lattice points because I realize that as I start to bend my lattice, it might not have as much information that I want. So I was going to add a couple more. I'm going to go back into my channel box. I'm going to select the lattice. If I scroll down under divisions, I'm going to increase this from 5. Let's see, should we go 8? 8 will work perfectly. And so what I want is, say, for example, I want this shape to bend over time. To do this, I'm going to right mouse click on the lattice, select the lattice points. Like I said previously, that this might not necessarily be the best way to animate, but you can animate these points. So what I want to do for my timeline, I only have 24 frames displayed. I'm going to add a keyframe at frame 1 and at 24 with my auto keyframe turned on at frame 12, I'm going to move these lattice points. What I need to do, I need to select all these lattice points. And so in the channel box, there's CVs. Click here to show. I'm going to click on here. Now we can't see them all, but I'm going to click on this box in the top left-hand corner. It selects all of them. I'm going to I'm going to tell it to have a keyframe, a key selected for, if I go through here, they each have an X, Y coordinate and Z space for each one of these points. So I have one at frame 1. I'm going to go to frame 24. I'm going to repeat this process, key selected. So now at frame 12, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a combination. Let's see, I'm going to look from the Z axis. So I'm looking down here in the bottom left-hand corner. And what I want to do is I'm going to select a whole range of them. What I'm going to do, I'm going to select, let's say I'll go from here and I'm going to, I want to rotate them. I'm going to use my rotate tool, press E. I'm going to rotate them forward. And you see this little spacing right here. I'm going to switch to my move tool. I'm going to move it forward. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. And now you can see I have a new keyframe at frame 12. So far I have this. So I'm going to continue to repeat this process. So I'm going to select the topmost lattice points. Let's go ahead and rotate them a bit. I'm going to go ahead and use my move tool, move them forward. So I'm trying to create a bend here. There we go. And I'm just going to continue to do this process. Now let me go ahead and introduce the lasso tool because now I have a weird angle. So I only want these shapes selected. Oops, I selected one too many. There it is. Switch to my rotate tool. I'm going to rotate a bit. I'm going to switch to my move tool, move this forward. So I'm kind of creating this bend right here. Now, if I want to move this down a bit, I like that better. So I'm getting this type of movement. And since all these have been keyframed at frame 1 and at frame 12, if I was to add another keyframe at a different point, that would automatically, or if I were to change those values, it would add a keyframe at that point as well. So I'm going to use my move tool. I'm going to continue this process. So now I have something that looks like this. This could look good for right now. Again, I have to restate that this might not necessarily be the best way to animate, especially since there are bones and joints and skinning. But if you have yet to go over those things, this is a good way of being able to do a quick little animation where you're keyframing the lattice points. I'm going to go ahead and stop this. I'm going to hide both of the lattice and the base by selecting them and pressing Control H. And now what I get, rewind, press play, we get this little animation. All right. So hopefully this was been helpful on how you could use lattices to be able to manipulate a shape. I'm going to bring back this lattice, or how to use these lattice points to be able to animate an object. Uh, Keep in mind that if you move these objects without moving the lattices, the lattice is animating. It's because the object was within that shape. Let's see what were to happen at a curiosity. Can we stop this? Can we play it? Oh, it's not allowing us to move. If it's slightly, yeah, we'll get something weird. Oh, let me also mention, let me go back. Very important in that your object needs to have enough divisions for the bending to take place. Oh, with my cube selected, this is very important. If I was to go back to my cube, remember how I created this cube with 10 divisions? If I only gave it 2 divisions, or if my cube, for example, let's go back, was 111, it just elongated. Now, it's not going to bend, it's not going to move as you expected because it does not have enough information to actually make this bend. Now, check out this shape as I add more divisions. So specifically along the height, this is now 2, it bends. If I go to 4, it further bends. Let's go 8. Now, if I continue to add more than 8, it's going to just have a smoother deformation. Let's double that up to 16. So at this point, it's going to be very minor. It's just going to be a smoother bend. So I don't necessarily need to go up to 32, but I always could. I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. 32. There you go. Rewind and play. It's just a smoother bend. But you determine on how many points. Let's go back down to 4 as an example. So this one has a more jagged edge. So finding the value that is going to be just good enough for yourself. 8 is more than sufficient for what you're trying to do. All right, that's very important. Let me rewind and stop this. So if you have any questions regarding using a lattice, go ahead and drop me a comment, send me an email. Otherwise, have a great day and I'll talk to you later. Bye.